And episode 33 of the Consistency Podcast is here. My name's Steve from Glosta, and this past Wednesday was an evening for the trolls and social media seagulls to show their true colors when it came to how they felt about Kirk Minahan. We all saw what happened to Kirk on hole 7 of the Barstool Chicago Mini Golf Open. It was certainly a surprise, it was shocking, but without hearing from Kirk, it didn't seem fair to assess what may have led him to scoring a 28 on that hole. But leave it to the clowns not wearing the suits to fill up Twitter with their nonsense. Some people called Kirk a quitter and were upset that he ruined their DraftKings pool or whatever that was, which was certainly tame. But others started with the accusations that he was inebriated or that he'd experienced some sort of mental health crisis. After reading this nonsense, I immediately Googled how someone can change professions in under 24 hours, as we had so many doctors, psychologists, therapists, and AA sponsors on Twitter. Everyone was the world's foremost authority on what Kirk was dealing with, and of course, they did this without clear information as to what happened and without concern about how Kirk would feel if he read these comments. But what else is new with these morons? I swear this is how they get their rocks off and go from 6 to midnight. Most people watch porn, but these guys like to tweet insensitive comments, which makes absolutely no sense to me. Now, to be fair, myself and I'm sure others first looked at this from a competitive standpoint. Ryan Whitney entered the third round up 8 shots over Kirk. It was a huge gap. But Kirk did say on round 2 of the broadcast that Ryan was finally entering the ring with the champ and that he was going to make things uncomfortable for Ryan from the start. And Kirk definitely tried to pull out all the stops to try and rattle Ryan. He got Riggs into the final pairing, and he had Rico Bosco caddy for him. These two are notorious trash talkers, and they, along with Kirk, were trying to get Whitney rattled. But you have to understand that there were only 2 players in the field, Whitney and Will Compton, who you just can't rattle as they are former professional athletes who have played on far bigger stages than the Barstool Chicago Mini Golf Tournament. And Whitney himself played 38 playoff games in his NHL career, so he wasn't going to let Riggs, Rico, or Kirk get to him. It just wasn't going to happen. Plus, the course itself looked very easy. I'm not great at mini golf, but that course wasn't one where a player not named Frank the Tank was going to score anything above the 4, so it seemed unrealistic that Kirk was going to catch Whitney. It just wasn't going to happen. So when hole 7 came around, the initial thought was that Kirk's meltdown was essentially admitting defeat and waving the white flag, because to Kirk, finishing anything but first is a loss. So did it really matter if he lost by 1 stroke or 50? A loss is a loss. And that is what I thought the perception was going to be on Twitter, especially when Dave Portnoy tweeted that Minifans were in shambles. A lot of us quickly defended Kirk by chirping back at Dave, and I responded that it was a bold move from a competitive standpoint by Kirk. But certainly, I didn't think others were going to take it to the level they did with their insensitive tweets. I'm sure some of them were doing their Twitter tough guy bit, but it just seemed a little over the top. Then you find out on the unnamed podcast that Kirk is dealing with some issues behind the scenes, mentioning that he told Portnoy what was going on. Between his shows and social media, we get about 15 hours or so of Kirk content per week. So we're not privy to what Kirk is privately dealing with in the 6+ days that he's not visible. And we aren't entitled to know what's going on, so why comment? It's like the scene in The Bronx Tale where Sonny and his guys accused Cologito of placing a bomb underneath Sonny's car after Cologito used the car to take Jane out on a date. Cologito was crushed by these accusations and was in tears, telling Sonny he would never do this, as Sonny was like a father to him. Remember that scene? It was so incredibly emotional. As Sonny and the guys were walking away, Cologito's dad, played by the great Robert De Niro, saw what was going on and began chirping Sonny when he was then punched in the gut by one of Sonny's guys. Sonny looked at Lorenzo and said, "Next time, find out what's going on before you open your mouth." And that is what the Seagulls should do. I know trolling is their version of fun, but these comments can sometimes make issues worse. So maybe it's time to stop the Twitter seagull stuff and realize that one of the most sincere forms of respect is listening. And if you respect Kirk or anyone struggling with this stuff, then maybe waiting and listening to what a person has to say before shooting your mouth off will go a long way. Think about this before you almost break your fingers feverishly trying to post a baseless accusation on Twitter. Moving on, the behind the third chair content that Justin and Coleman put out this week was absolutely awesome. And to be part of it was enjoyable. I want to thank them for that. Not to be biased, but this is another example of why these guys are good at what they do. In the past, and it's zero offense to the past producers, Kirk's time off meant that we were all basically on vacation and we needed to try to find ways to fill the void of not having KMS. But now these guys, along with the great shows on this network, help fill the void. And these guys have more content coming out, which hopefully will be great to watch. The only knock on these guys is that the Twitter account definitely stinks. But isn't that grasping for straws at this point? These guys are doing a wonderful job and we should appreciate them for it. And I do agree with the comments by my pals B.A., Retta Montante, and Mike and the Memphis fans that maybe it would be best for David from Maryland, Don the Jeweler, and Ziggy to take turns running the show account. And I would also add Shark Minahan to that list because he does a wonderful job on Twitter. Maybe give these guys one full week each month to do their thing and see where it goes. Because I think, like I said, these guys are great on Twitter and they would revitalize the show account while also freeing up Justin and Coleman to produce more content when the show is not on. It would be a win-win for everybody, so I hope it happens and, Kirk takes this into consideration. It would be a great thing. From the Barstool side, I found the PFT Jose Canseco stuff to be absolutely funny on Twitter this week. Canseco is a well-known nutcase and he gets rattled very fast, and having PFT get under his skin was absolutely brilliant. Canseco is now challenging PFT to a fight, probably at a rough and rowdy, and is pressing Portnoy on Twitter to make it happen. On paper, this looks like it would definitely be lopsided. I know Canseco's 59 years old, but he's 6'4", and you could tell he's still on the juices. He's completely chiseled. So he should pummel PFT, but does anyone actually think Canseco is even going to step in the ring? He has a history of backing out or quitting fights, doing this with Lenny Dykstra and Barstool Will in the past. So the chances of him backing out again or quitting is very high. But you have to wonder if Portnoy even wants to do this, because you have to remember that fight with Will and Canseco only lasted 12 seconds before Canseco quit. Portnoy was forced to pay Canseco $1 million for what Dave called a dive. So this might be more arm waving by Canseco than anything else. But it would be funny to see how far this plays out. As you know, Canseco will eventually embarrass himself as usual. And wouldn't it be absolutely wild if they did fight and PFT beat him? I mean, that would be a monumental upset. So I'm interested to see how far this plays out. To close, and speaking of arm waving, there were negative comments by Cinema Lords towards me the past week, which continues a trend that has gone on since February. As mentioned, the feelings are not mutual, so I'm not sure where this animosity is coming from, nor will I participate in it. He seems like a good guy, and as mentioned before, I enjoy and support his podcast as he is part of this network, and I will continue to do this going forward. And I'll also continue to listen to and support all the shows on this network, as the content has been brilliant since we started this new network. Everybody's doing a great job. It's a lot of good stuff, and our CEO John from Scranton continues to do a good job of making sure the shows get up and making sure that they are edited and produced well. So this is a good network to be a part of, and I'm glad Cinema Lords is part of it as well. But he or anyone else in my quote-unquote fan club can continue to do this one-way narrative, understanding that I will no longer respond to this stuff. And I'm not interested in continuing this charade in studio, which may be the impetus of his arm waving. And it's not because of the belief that I'm quote unquote better than everyone. It's because it just wouldn't make for a good episode. Going into studio when asked is a blessing, and the goal is to make the listener enjoy the show and get some laughs. I don't think that would happen in this case, and I highly doubt it's something Kirk is interested in. I know I'm not, and he doesn't need to drum up a one-sided rivalry to get into studio. If Kirk wants you in, then he will have Coleman or Justin reach out. Or if Cinema Lords or anybody is dying to go into studio, they can be proactive and ask Coleman and Justin if they can go in. They can provide their schedule. They can let them know of their availability. And if they want them in, they'll invite them. I mean, it's so much easier than using me to get in. Remember, not every bit or idea lands, so maybe it's time for Cinema Lords to retire this one. He is good with content, and his Behind the Third Chair was a good watch. So maybe he should focus on content creation and not trying to appease his 140 Twitter followers with this stale bit. And again, I find this entire better than everyone stuff to be absolutely funny. Anyone who knows me or spoke to me in Portland knows that this is definitely not the case. Far from it. It was a pleasure to meet people and to get to know them in person, and I hope to meet more people and be involved in more content ideas moving forward. There are already some ideas planned, and I'm always willing to help anyone with a show idea or content, so please do not hesitate to reach out, because I am so ready to help people and to make this network even stronger. That's it for now. Have a great week. Be good to the ones you love, and I'll talk to you soon.